Washington has lashed out at the countries that Edward Snowden has been using as stepping stones in his quest to asylum. It's warned China of the consequences of allowing the 30-year-old to flee to Russia, while hinting that both Moscow and Beijing are far from being bastions of free speech themselves. RT's Guy Chikian has more from the U.S.
The White House says Hong Kong officials had received Washington's request to arrest Snowden and still made, quote, a deliberate choice to let him go. So Washington clearly takes it as a snub from China. Here's the president's press secretary.
We are just not buying that this was a technical decision by a Hong Kong immigration official. This was a deliberate choice by the government to release a fugitive despite a valid arrest warrant. And that decision unquestionably has a negative impact on the U.S.-China relationship.
We remember that in response to the U.S. request to arrest Snowden, the government of Hong Kong issued a statement saying that the documents the U.S. provided did not fully comply with the legal requirements under Hong Kong law. But also, in that same statement, the government of Hong Kong said they wanted more information from the U.S. government about the hacking of computer systems in Hong Kong by U.S. government agencies. And that was one of Edward Snowden's revelations. Snowden gave China a great political counter-argument to U.S. constant accusations against China. Now, the U.S. can't accuse China of cyber attacks without being accused of hypocrisy. So there is an interesting dynamic behind all this. The U.S. wanted China, or the semi-autonomous government of Hong Kong, to give them the man who had leaked U.S. secrets. But one of those secrets is about activities of the U.S. government against China. So it's possible that China's dilemma was to either thank Edward Snowden or to arrest him. Hong Kong says they've done everything in accordance with their laws. Now, as far as Russia, Edward Snowden has been in transit in Russia, and Russian authorities say they have no legal authority to arrest him. But U.S. politicians and pundits on television use what seems like a Cold War rhetoric to present Russia and China as the enemies that Snowden is helping. And the imagination of some journalists is running wild as they joke about how Edward Snowden is being briefed by the Russian president. And one former official, also on one of the news channels, said Russia and China are going to use this to embarrass the U.S. One should argue it's Snowden's revelations that embarrass the U.S., not Russia or China. But that's exactly what's happening now. U.S. policymakers are doing everything possible to divert attention away from Snowden's revelations, and certainly one way of doing this is to present it as a Cold War-style cat-and-mouse chase. That way you have U.S. media now almost cheering for Edward Snowden's capture, although just a little while ago, some of the same journalists were grateful for a greater public awareness of the fact that the U.S. government is spying on millions of people who've done nothing wrong. Snowden, of course, has no illusions as to what lengths the U.S. government will go to catch him. Edward Snowden also said it's not government persecution that he fears most. He said, the greatest fear that I have about the outcome of these disclosures is that nothing will change. From how it's developing, it doesn't look like things will change for Americans anytime soon. But for the world, the implications of his revelations could be significant. For example, the fact that the U.S. now can't accuse China of cyber attacks without being accused of hypocrisy.
Amnesty International says the U.S. shouldn't hunt down Edward Snowden and other whistleblowers who disclose human rights violations. Michael Bohanec, Director of Law and Policy at the group, is now joining me live with more on this. So why do you say, or does your group think, that Edward Snowden shouldn't be prosecuted by the U.S.?
Well, what he's disclosed essentially are things that never should have been secret in the first place. We're talking, of course, about the collection without warrants of vast amounts of data from telephone records. We've got the ability of the U.S. government to get into the servers of Facebook, of Google, of all of these other large computer, these large outfits that nearly everybody uses. A lot of this we had suspected before, but we have confirmation of this now. And these are not only human rights violations, violations of the right to privacy, and violations of some of the basic rights to, if a government is going to conduct an investigation, that it should be doing so with regard to specific cases on the basis of specific evidence, with a warrant, with all of the formalities that's required. Instead, of course, what he's disclosed is a wholesale shopping expedition on the part of the U.S. And the fact is that should just never have been a secret in the first place.
So do you think it'll make it harder for governments to keep secret information locked up with more and more people trying to get at their data?
Well, I think what the lesson for governments around the world is that when you're getting persistent questions about the extent to which you intend to invade the privacy of your own citizens and of citizens of other countries without any probable cause, without any suspicions, in order to get information that you think might be useful someday in some sense, that there will be questions asked. And those questions will be persistent enough that sooner or later the chickens will come home to roost, as they say in the U.S.
So what do you think Snowden could expect if he is extradited to the States?
Well, we've raised a lot of concerns about the crimes for which he's being sought, and then the treatment that he might receive upon surrender to the U.S. With respect to the treatment, we know from other cases that, for example, in the case of Bradley Manning, that individuals have been subjected to what not just we, but also UN officials have called cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. And that's yet another potential violation of human rights law to which somebody shouldn't be subjected. It's a reason not to extradite. With regard to the crimes, we've noted that because he's being charged, among other things, under the Espionage Act, under a 1917 law in the United States, there's no possibility, it appears, to say, look, the reason that I did this is because the information is in the public interest. My disclosure may have been unauthorized, but the public interest outweighs the state's interest in keeping that information secret.
All right, and one more question I want to get in here. Do you think that the Obama administration is on record now as having prosecuted more whistleblowers than any other administration in the U.S.? Do you think that that is something particular to an aspect of this administration, or do you think it's just the matter of now we're seeing more information come out than ever before? Now we're seeing the rise of the internet. There's a global information network out there, and it's just whoever was in the White House at this point would have to deal with this issue at some point. And now is the time.
I mean, in one sense, the administration, the governments around the world are fighting a losing battle. It is true that it is now possible to get information from a variety of sources, that the demands for information are such that eventually the dirty laundry will come out, and that governments that try to keep these things secret just aren't going to be able to do it. So I think one of the reasons is just the way the world works now and the way that information flows now, and that's all to the good as far as we're concerned. Second of all, I don't think that there's anything problematic with governments keeping national security information secret, and particularly keeping secret information that could hurt other people if it were disclosed. But that's not what this administration has been trying to do, and that's not what the Bush administration was trying to do. So what we're really seeing now is a continuation and an augmentation of the policies that began with President Bush, really to extend government power to the utmost and then beyond, and also to use all of the tools at their disposal to enforce a sort of a vision of the world and a sense of the projection of U.S. power that too often is disregarding.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I have to interrupt you there, but thanks very much for giving us your perspective. Michael Bohenik, Director of Law and Policy at Amnesty International.